Welcome to the Future of Leadership. I'm your host, Zoë Routh, leadership futurist, author, and adventure seeker. Here we like to ask the big questions of what if and figure out what we need now for what's next. Together we will work through leadership and life transitions with grace. Now, on with the show. Well, hey there, it's Zoe. My question for you this week is, what's your plan for mattering in midlife? Let's find out. Well, hey, on Planet Zoe this week. First of all, a big shout out to Joe and Courtney, who sent me messages about the show reappearing in their feed. I'm so glad that you're happy that I am back on air for this season. It's great to hear from listeners. And if you want to send me a message, ask a question, please do so. Zoe@zoerouth.com. In other updates, I am still in the middle of fulfillment for Olympus Dawn. The Kickstarter finished. We funded in less than 24 hours, which was amazing. And I had 30 backers, which was way more than I expected, to be honest, for my first fiction campaign, especially in sci-fi. It seems that I have a very particularly niche topic. So it's sci-fi with no aliens, not any big galactic wars. It's more like speculative fiction, near future exploration of what could happen. In any case, the book is with the printer. It is scheduled to go live on all the major retailers on March the 1st. You can pre-order off my website, or you can go to any of the major retailers and pre-order the ebooks there at your favorite retail shop. So that was my little advertisement for the day. What that means also is that now I can get on to my next writing project, which is, drumroll, all about ancient Rome. So I love ancient Rome. I love historical fiction. And I'm going to set my next series in ancient Rome based around the primary women in the late Republic, early Empire period. So if you think about Caesar, he's the big name in ancient Rome. One of his lovers, Servilia, is going to be the subject of the first book, and her story will be told through her slave's eyes. It'll be kind of like a spy thriller, historical fiction focused on women. So if that sounds oozy and gooey for you and exciting, let me know. I'm certainly excited about it. So I'm in the research phase before I put pen to paper. I'll probably try and generate a short story to see what people think of it, and to get some feedback and some encouragement, to be honest. But I'll let you know when that's all out and ready. Aside from that, with the launch of the book, I have been doing some very pedantic updates of my website and my bookstore and a whole lot of admin. It's incredible the amount of admin that goes into publishing a book when you're independent. You have to list it on all these various different sites. You have to get everything consistent. And it's not the work that I'm best suited to, honestly, because detail is not my forte. But I'm leaning hard into that and overcoming my usual tendencies and getting it all done. The other thing that I'm doing here in Newcastle is basically saying yes to every social event to meet new people. Last week, I had 4 major social events. I went to a what was it called? Books at the Bolo, which was a book club launch thing for a local author, which was, the name of the book was Not My Shame by Martina. I can't remember her last name, sorry. But it was all about her life growing up. She was not a happy topic, abused by her grandfather and uncle on the maternal side, and then had a life of trying to overcome that. And it was fascinating. She ended up in a cult. If you know Osho, which was what he was called later on in his career, Rajneeshi. So she was a Rajneeshi in Australia, then went to the US to join the commune there before Osho fled the country on basically tax evasion or immigration evasion. And he ended up back in India, and she joined him again in India. Fascinating story. So I didn't think I would enjoy the book because of the nature of the topic. But that part of the book is, like, the child abuse stuff is small in terms of its description, and she doesn't start the book with that, thank goodness. And I'm actually really fascinated by the story. So I can actually recommend that book. Not My Shame is what it's called. So that was the first event. And then I went to Running for Resilience, which is a running group that started in Canberra and has been exported to Newcastle. And they've been going like 5 weeks. And the idea there is you meet at 6 p.m., you walk or run for half an hour, and then have drinks afterwards. That's the thing you do in Newcastle. Newcastle, by the way. I've been told that I can't say Newcastle because it sounds dreadful. And I've been trying to practice my A's. Newcastle. Or just say Newey. I can do that. So in Newey, it's been going for about 5 weeks. So I went off to that. And then there was something else I went to. I can't even remember. But the most oh yes, it was a book club on Saturday. That was really cool. But before that was the main feature, which has blown my mind. A really fun group. It's called Granny Grommets of Newey. This was a group of 5 or 6 women who were retired, and they wanted to do something social. So they went boogie boarding on Nobby's Beach, which is just around the corner from where I live. And they've been going for a couple of years, and they have like 1,700 people on their Facebook page. So I turned up on Friday, not ready to boogie board because my back's been troubling me. I just wanted to meet these women, and they just had an absolute ball. I walked up there, and I was greeted by the famous Libby, and it seems everybody in Newey knows Libby. And Libby has this wild hair. She was a former hairdresser, well-known hairdresser in Newey. Bright orange lipstick, massive pearls, and a personality to match. And she said, "Hi, are you new?" I'm like, "Yes." And she thrust into my hand a certificate that says, "On this day, I became a Granny Grommet." And then the next thing she did, she thrust at me a bag of bagels. I'm like, "What is this about?" She said, "Well, it just so happens that the bagel producer, Abe's, is donating 200 bags of bagels to every RSL. And so you lucked out." I went home with 3 bags of bagels and just had a ball. These women, they're like 2-year-olds. They get in the surf with their boogie boards, and they just ride the froth. Granted, the day was pretty wild, so I'm not sure they could actually get out the back. Most of them didn't have flippers, so it was super fun. And I'm going back this week. So that has been my social engagements for the week, just meeting new people, throwing myself into everything, being brave, showing up, not knowing anyone, and being present. So that's really fun. So onwards to this week's topic, which came out of the conversation with Digby, if you've listened to last week's episode, about mattering. And I was so inspired after that conversation with Digby. I went and looked for books around this topic, and sure enough, there is a book called Mattering: The Secret to Building a Life of Deep Connection and Purpose by Jennifer Breheny Wallace. She also wrote, you might have read it, Never Enough: When Achievement Culture Becomes Toxic. So I'm like, yes, this is exactly what is going to fit into this whole chrysalis idea, this notion that often in midlife we start to wonder, do I matter? And this is some of the reasons or some of the places you might find that mattering becomes stalled or problematic. You might be facing empty nest. Your kids might be about to graduate high school or move away to university or just leave home. And that is a significant transition where you are no longer the caregiver or provider. And that can be really cage rattling, at least disturbing. I know I've got a number of different friends whose kids have just left home, and it's like, okay, this will be an adjustment, which is code for, I don't know how I feel about this. Weird, I guess. Of course, they're pleased for their kids and sad that they're no longer going to be around as much. You might be facing a redundancy, which is never fun, and especially if it was unexpected, and that can make us feel like we don't matter very much. You might be heading towards retirement, and even if you're excited about the prospect of that, part of you might be apprehensive about what is meaningful for me. Or you might be moving house, as I have done recently, from one city to the next and figure out, how do I matter in this new community? You might be facing parenthood for the first time, and that is a whole upheaval as well. You might have been diagnosed with a chronic illness, and your previous state of health is changing or has changed or will change. And that can be quite confronting as well. Or someone close to you is drifting, and they could be drifting into later years, towards end of life, towards a new life themselves, but you could be left behind in all sorts of ways. So if you're facing any of that, then this particular episode is for you. I think the first thing that we need to think about is that transitions, even like the happy, exciting one of mine of moving from Canberra to Newcastle, which we've been planning about for 5 years, and I've spoken about a lot on this show, is that it can also bring gains. It can bring gains as well as losses. So transitions can bring gains as well as losses. It's not always clear cut and smooth sailing, that's for sure. So Nancy Schosberg is a researcher who is quoted in a number of different books I'm reading at the moment. And she was facing her own loss of identity and purpose in her chosen retirement. So she did some me search on successful retirement. So what is me search? Is when you start researching a topic to help yourself. I love that. And she went on this, pursuit of interviewing people who had moved into retirement, and especially looking for people who were successful in doing it, and even those who struggled with it, to look at the patterns and see what makes for a successful move into retirement, this one particular transition she was focusing on. And she mapped out about 4 different types of transitions, which I'll speak about just shortly. Any of these transitions can signal a loss of mattering, meaning feeling important to other people. Okay. So where am I? Oh, I did map out those transitions. Where did I put that? I made my notes and then I forgot where I put everything. Just one second here. Here we go. The 4 types of transitions. The first one is anticipated, like retirement or graduation. The second type of transition is unanticipated. Could be a career-ending thing, an injury, or winning the lottery, which is unanticipated. It could be a non-event, something that you planned for but didn't happen, such as you planned to be a parent and it just never happened. Or you planned to get the promotion and you didn't get it. Or you planned to move to another country and it just didn't happen. And the 4th type of transition is sleepers that you recognize afterwards. You look back and you're like, when did this happen? You fall out of love with someone, or maybe you fall in love with someone, or you gradually become an addict, and it's something that you didn't notice until you're well into it. This is the core understanding of making sense of mattering. And this is from the book Mattering, as I mentioned, by Jennifer Breheny Wallace. The core to making it through this particular type of transition and finding meaning is to tune in, first of all, figure out what's happening inside of you, and broadcast out. So it's tuning into what's going on for you and broadcasting out your attention onto others. And what Breheny Wallace talks about is that there's 6, let me just count them, 1, 2, 3, 5, no, five aspects of the core for mattering. And the first one is recognition. This is when your actions are valued and your absence is felt. And this can apply to your personal life as well as your work life. And interesting, the research shows that 45% of workers don't feel valued. Almost half the people you work with, and you might be one of them, don't feel valued. And we've heard all about the great disengagement. It became a big part of the quiet quitting thing following the COVID-19 crisis. But recognition is such a simple thing, and something I always recommend to leaders that you pay attention to. A simple word of, that was a great job you did on the presentation, or thank you so much for submitting your report on time, or you really made a difference to the team today and your contributions. Whatever it is, that recognition is so valuable. And you know it yourself. If someone has a quiet word or a public word about your contributions, how amazing that is. So here are some tips to bring recognition. This is the broadcasting out piece that you can you can exercise in your own life. And here's the secret also for mattering is if you're feeling like you don't matter, be someone who shows others that they matter and you will feel good. So this is like this virtuous cycle of showing others that they matter makes you feel good as well. So some things you can do for recognition at work or not at work is say thank you to service people. I love doing this. It's such a simple thing and it makes me feel like a better human. Whether they are bagging your groceries or checking out your groceries or at the post office, being a genuine connector of humans is really great. You know, these are people who have lives and families and aspirations and responsibilities. They're not just people who are there to give you your package or check out your groceries. They're here as other human beings. So just saying thank you is really good. Appreciate a colleague. If you're in a workplace, rather than waiting to be recognized or appreciated, be the person who recognizes others. Sing out or, bring to the attention that so-and-so has been a great team member or did a great thing or had a great performance or was just really helpful. So pay attention to others and what they're doing and be the person who recognizes others. Text a friend. Tell them about what they mean to you. And it's so easy not to do that, right? It's just like, you think about your friends and then you do nothing. But it's so good just to sing out and say, hey, you know what? You're a really good friend. I really appreciate this about you. And I've been doing that a little bit with some of my friends on their birthdays. It's just sharing what I think is amazing about them. And it feels really good to do that. You just brighten somebody else's day and you signal that you're paying attention. The other thing that I've been doing recently too is I've been sending copies of Power Games, my most recent leadership book, to the top newsletter readers of my newsletter, which you can subscribe to. If you go to zoerouth.com and click on blog, you get a free copy of People Stuff, my multiple award-winning book from 2020. And you can get all my weekly emails, which also captures the podcast recordings as well. So if you're not a subscriber, do get on that. But something I've never done before is reach out to the people who've been on it for a long time and consistently opened my emails, because you know how email is. It's busy and everybody has too much of it. And there's people who open my stuff consistently, which is awesome. It makes my life worthwhile. And like, I put a lot of effort into the podcast, into my newsletter articles. These people are listening and reading and appreciating my work. So I sent them a gifts of appreciation. So I mailed out a whole bunch of copies of Power Games to those newsletter readers. And it was a mattering love bombing experience. So that's another thing you can do is just, well, not everybody has a podcast, but the principle is there, like who's been behind you or supporting you that you can just reach out and say thank you to. Another thing that the book lists is the wall of appreciation. You might have some version of this in your workplace. If you don't, it would be cool to put it up there. So a big cork board with a pile of index cards or Post-it notes next to it. And there you can just scribble an appreciation for someone who does something amazing at work. And there you go. And pretty soon, it's pretty cool to just read what people have to say about each other. So recognition is the first core principle of mattering. The second one is reliance. And what Wallace says about that, she says, when we feel needed because others depend on us, we feel needed because other people depend on us. And this is at the core of some of the empty nester challenges, is because our kids need us growing up, right? They won't survive without us feeding them, clothing them, nurturing them. And then when they go, it's like, oh, I am no longer needed in the same way. And that can be problematic because when we want to feel needed, we can also slip into the drama triangle. So you might be familiar with Stephen Cartman's drama triangle with the victim, rescuer, and bully. And rescuers can become addicted to feeling needed. So they can create or engage in drama where they get to play the hero and therefore bring meaning and mattering back into their world. Very toxic dynamic. So this is a little bit different. So how do you need to be mindful that you're not slipping into that, that you're creating dependency in a unhealthy way. So here's versions of healthy being needed. just be of service. Maybe you can walk your neighbor's dog, offer to walk a neighbor's dog, or pick up something at the grocery store for them. These little gestures are fabulous. Or maybe you can volunteer somewhere. I know a friend who left work, and one of the things she really wanted to do was volunteer at different organizations. So in Canberra, she went and volunteered at Lifeline Book Fair. And so she loves books. She gets to volunteer. She gets to be part of a team. It's a win-win-win. What else? This is an example of how you can just be attuned to opportunistic experiences around this. My friend Pete sent me a text recently. He was in Newcastle. That was my A there, Newcastle, on a work job, and he needed to get to the airport early, but the vehicle hire place wasn't open until much later after his flight had left. Would I be able to take the keys in him if he dropped the car off at the car hire place? It's only 5K away. I'm like, yes, I can do that for you. Previously, I'd be like, oh, what a pain in the bum. I have to go and find where this place is, drop the keys, interrupt my very busy week. And I thought, no, I want to be someone who matters to others. And so that's what I did. I said, yes, I will do that for you. So he dropped off the keys early in the morning, and I took them round later and did a good deed. Yay. It felt like I mattered. I made a difference in someone's life. So what Wallace says is find a need in the world and apply your strengths. You don't need to solve the massive problems of the world, but what strengths have you got? And I thought about some of the strengths I have. I like to bake. I like to bake gluten-free, pescatarian food. Well, not that you bake many pescatarian things, unless you're making a fish pie. But I like to bake. And I thought one of the things I would like to do for my neighbors, and I haven't yet executed on this, is to bake on a Sunday and just drop by some cookies or something nice for my neighbors and just show, thinking of you, here's something nice for you. Hopefully they like it. Not all my baking turns out well, however, so I have to not create an expectation that it's going to work every week. In fact, my brother and sister-in-law came over for cake, and I made a cake quickly, and my sister-in-law cut into her cake, and she's like, oh, you've made it with this special gooey sauce in the middle. I'm like, actually, no, that's just uncooked cake. Anyway, I should have just shut up and let her live the dream on that one. Okay, so that was point number 2, reliance. So we have recognition and reliance, 2 core aspects of mattering. The third one, according to Wallace, is importance, to feel significance because you are prioritized. I thought, well, that's interesting. I struggle with this one. Like, how do I become someone's priority? That's kind of self-oriented. Then I thought about Adam Grant and his book, Givers and Takers. And his wonderful research shows that the most successful people are givers, but not givers who just give. There are the givers who also are happy to ask for support. Those are the most successful people. And the way to become important in others' eyes, actually, is to ask for advice. And Grant also says this is a great way of helping other people feel significant, is you ask them for their advice. And I love being asked for advice, actually, because it's like, oh, someone recognized that I have expertise and knowledge and wisdom to share. That's cool. So when my nephew asked me for advice about a workplace challenge, I'm like, yes, I'd love to help you with that. That's lovely. Thank you. Thank you for thinking of me as someone who could help. Ask somebody for advice. Seek a mentor, someone who is then invested in you for the same principle of, you sought me out because you think I have something to share. Therefore, I'm going to pay attention to you because you obviously value me. I want to value you. So seek a mentor. And be someone who, again, this is broadcasting out. If you want to be prioritized or feel important in someone else's eyes, do that for someone else. Prioritize them. Go to someone else's party or event when they ask. It takes a lot of energy and risk, social risk, to invite people to do things. Meet them halfway. I'm not sure if you've ever done this, but if you've created an event or a party or made an invitation to dinner and people are like, or they pull out at the last minute and you're like, oh. And that rejection sucks. So don't be that person. Go and be a good supporter. Make someone else feel important if they do reach out. And then also extend an invitation and don't worry about the people who do drop out. It's because people have become really lazy since COVID. It's so much easier just to stay at home in your pajamas watching Netflix as opposed to, going out and fronting up and putting yourself out there and connecting. I can't believe we're into this stage now. But you know what? In Newcastle, I'm learning how to be very socially forward and getting out there and not just getting over my lethargy or inertia when it comes to socializing. All right, number 4 is ego extension. And this is about you feel cared for because others are invested in your well-being. So this is similar to importance, I reckon, importance and ego extension. So importance is people prioritize you. Ego extension is because other people are invested in you. And they're like your corner men is what Wallace calls them. People who are in your corner and who are championing and cheering for you. And if you're watching the Olympics, I love how many corner men there are showing up for these athletes halfway around the world. Isn't that awesome? And they're just thrilled and excited for their athletes as they fly down the hill or whatever it is, the sport that's going on there. And we need people like that. And I actually find this is one of the hardest. Asking for support can feel like an imposition. And these are all stories in my head, of course. And it feels like asking for favors or begging for favors. An example of that is when I'm promoting a book, asking for people to be on my street team, which means, will you help me promote this book? And by, telling your social network about it or telling your newsletter list about it. And I feel like cap in hand, like, please, can you help me talk about my book? I just feel awkward about it. But here's the thing. I have an amazing street team who love my work and are very delighted to share about it. I guess that's the thing, will people like my stuff? Do the people like me? Will they actually promote about it? And if I'm feeling this awkward about it, and I'm a fairly forward-thinking, competent, confident human, I reckon there's a lot of people who would feel really nervous about asking for support. But here's the thing. Don't just ask for favors. Be the person who is in someone else's corner. And there's a Buddhist word for this, apparently, called mudita, is taking pleasure in someone else's well-being. And instead of getting jealous with somebody else's success, be, a cheerleader. And this helps with my sense of envy when I see other authors succeeding, quotation marks, in a bigger and better way than I feel like I am. And like, oh my God, what's wrong with me? Just like, that's amazing. They've hit the right note with readers. They've done a great campaign or whatever it is. Awesome. Celebrate it. And that makes you feel less of a dill, less of a, jealous loser, and more of like, oh yeah, I'm going to be a better human and be somebody else's champion, somebody else's corner man, and exercise my mudita, delighting in someone else's well-being. Well, number 5, according to Wallace, is attunement. And this is number 5 in terms of how we bring mattering into our life, attunement. And attunement is to feel deeply understood and meaningfully responded to. God, that's really awkward language. Basically, when someone understands you deeply and has responded to you in a meaningful way. Essentially, become a good listener. And it was interesting. I wish I could remember where I actually saw this. There was a poll, I think it was on LinkedIn. And it was something like, how do you feel appreciated? And, or how do you feel successful? And the top response was a version of, I feel listened to and seen and understood. I'm like, really? That's the number 1. Wow. Okay. Wow. So people are craving that attention, that having the sunlight or the torch put on them and to feel really, truly seen and understood, which is amazing because I feel like I do that really well. Like I've been an executive coach for 20 plus years, so I'm attuned to being attuned. I listen deeply. I pay attention to what people say. I love meeting new people and trying to figure them out and understand and get their story. But this doesn't come easily for most of us. Most of us are shy. Most of us are worried about how others perceive us, and we are tuned in instead of broadcasting out. So make a bid for attunement. Open the doors to attunement by sharing your own story, being open-hearted, or Brene Brown would say, being vulnerable. Start to tell a story, like maybe I'm thinking about my yoga ladies now. So Monday is yoga, and after yoga is coffee, of course, as you do in Newcastle. You go out for a coffee or a tea after every activity. And with my yoga ladies, I can start by sharing a story of a disappointment. I'm not there yet. At the moment, there's 10 of us going out for coffee, and it's still surface level. But if I want to feel deeply understood and meaningfully responded to, it's got to go beyond what did you do on the weekend kind of conversation. So attunement is opening the door, making it okay to talk about more serious things. One of the key parts of the book called Mattering is making place for mattering. And I love this part. This is creating gathering spaces to be seen, heard, and valued. The concept is the third space. Work is one space, home is your second space, and your third space is somewhere else where you gather. And it could be the gym, it could be a cafe, it could be a pub, it could be a library, some third space. And I know with my running group in Canberra, Brian, who organizes the group, talked about TTS, which was the name of our group, which stands for Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Yeah, the very creative running group name. So TTS was considered a third space by many. And it's a place where, yes, they got their sport, and it's also where they got to have conversations and socialize and make and meet friends. So a third space. So we can create third spaces for people. Run for Resilience is an example of that. And they've teed up with a place down on the corner here called Custom House, which is an old colonial building, which is a beautiful building. And the Custom House puts on the drinks for after the running. So this is an example where we don't do coffee, but we do drinks. So you go for your half an hour run and you can have a beer and a glass of wine afterwards. Not my thing. I happily have a glass of water. But the whole point is it's a third space. You can make that place be a ritual where you gather and connect with folks. And I've also got the gym here in Newey and Newcastle. And hopefully the granny grommets to be a third space of gathering. I love it. What I love about Mattering is the book is that it's a nice counterpoint or a different angle to take on this idea of being significant and making a difference. I remember reading Moral Ambition by Rutger Bregman and feeling at once inspired and insignificant because that book is all about people who saw a need, a problem, applied their resources and their talents to it, and fixed it on a major scale. And I think it's the major scale, which is in the intimidating piece. It's like, oh, I can never create a movement that raises $3 million to change homelessness in my local area. That's the kind of scale that Bregman shares. And it's like, it's just, we don't often have visions of ourselves being able to create that kind of a difference. And the counterpoint to that is this book, Mattering, where we can take small actions. And she includes a lovely quote from Mother Teresa. Well, allegedly from Mother Teresa anyway. And the quote is, "Not all of us can do great things, but we can do small things with great love." I just absolutely love that. Not all of us can do great things, but we can do small things with great love. And I think this is an important step or component of mattering, wherever you are, in whichever transition you're facing. And I've been full of all this idea of mattering and transitions as I'm leaning heavily into this, as I develop some thoughts around the chrysalis of midlife. And I'm just coming back from the beach with my 3 bags of bagels after going to Granny Gromit's. And I'm standing in the elevator, and there's a woman who comes into the elevator. She's older, she's walking with a cane, and she's kind of got a pained look on her face. And I said, "How are you?" And she said, "Oh yeah, getting by." And then her eyes land on the bagel. She says, "Oh, I thought that was a bunch of flowers." And I said, "No, bagels." She's like, "Where did you get bagels?" And her eyes went wide and her face lit up. I said, well, Granny Grommets told the story. And I thrust a bag of bagels at her, and she took them as if I was handing her a crown. She said, thank you. My day just got better. I'm like, well, I don't need 3 bags. Here you go. Enjoy. And it was that small gesture of connecting with another human, asking how they were, seeing the delight, understanding clearly that my bagels were coveted and would be delightful for her. An easy gesture of just giving that bag away. And I felt on top of the world after that, just having come and met the crazy grannies on their boogie boards, and what fun community that's going to be. And then connecting with this woman who lives in my building and just offering a small token of love, really. So do small things with great glove, and glove, maybe. Well, if you've done small things with great love or have a mattering story to tell, hey, tell me about it. Send me an email, drop a message on LinkedIn or on Substack, where I've also been publishing articles that pair with each of the audios that I produce every week. So I've reinvigorated Substack and experimenting with that. In any case, I'd love to hear from you. Next week, we are doing a deeper dive into transitions. So we talked about some of the transitions, and we're going to explore that a little bit more deeply. What are these transitions about? What can we expect, and how we can make our way through them? And I'm hoping by then I'll have an announcement about my new program, The Chrysalis, which I've been nattering about ever since I relaunched the show or came back to the air in January. So transitions, that's what's coming up next. In the meantime, live with grace, lead in service, live well, lead well. See you next week.